After 8 years of leading the Boston Red Sox, Alex Cora was fired 2 weeks ago. And today, I finally want to give my thoughts on it. Because over the past 2 weeks, we've learned a lot. Not just about the decision itself, but about everything that led up to it. What really happened behind the scenes? What went wrong on the field? And how it all led to one of the biggest decisions this franchise has made in years. And the more you look into it, the more you realize this wasn't just about one bad stretch or one bad season. This has been building for a while. Saturday, April 25th, marked the end of an era for the Boston Red Sox as they fired Alex Cora. After 8 years as manager, Cora leaves behind a legacy that includes a 2018 World Series championship, a historic 108-54 season, and playoff appearances in 2021 and 2025. He wasn't just a manager. He was one of the most successful leaders this franchise has had in the modern era. And real quick, shout out to the Section 10 Scoop Shop on Patreon. We actually knew firing about 5 minutes before it broke, and we knew something big going down an hour before. So hat tip to Jerry for that. So how does a manager like that get fired? Because when you look at it on the surface, it doesn't make sense. You don't just move on from someone with that kind of resume, that kind of success, that kind of history with your organization. But once you start digging deeper, you realize this wasn't just about Alex Cora. This was about everything around him. And this is where you can start to question Alex Cora, because these problems didn't just show up this year. Since 2022, this team has committed over 500 errors, and at some point, that's not bad luck, that's a pattern. And it shows up in how the team plays. The lineup changes constantly, players don't have defined roles, and there's no real rhythm from game to game. Look at someone like Marcelo Mayer, a young player who should be developing with consistent at-bats instead gets moved around and never fully settles in. And when that keeps happening, year after year, you start to question preparation. Because this team is consistently not ready to go at the start of the season. And then you look at the offense, and it tells the same story. This team came out flat again. In April, they were hitting around .230 as a group with one of the lowest OPS marks in the league, not hitting for power and not producing in big spots. And when you look at the players, it explains why. Trevor Story struggled early. Roman Anthony is hitting around .208 while being asked to do too much at 21. And Jarren Duran isn't producing like a core piece. But the bigger issue isn't just the numbers, it's the situation. These are players you're relying on, but they're not in stable roles, and that shows up in the results. And when your offense looks like that, it's not random. It's a reflection of how the team is being run. And this is where everything changes. Because yeah, Alex Cora had flaws. The errors, the lineup decisions, the slow starts, that's all real. But he didn't build this team. Craig Breslow did. For years, Alex Cora was one of the most influential voices in this organization. Ownership made him almost untouchable. He survived multiple front office regimes. But now, that's different. Breslow has built that relationship with ownership, and his influence has grown. And that right there shows how dysfunctional this organization has become, constantly shifting direction depending on who's in control. And when you look at everything, the roster, the direction, the decisions, it all points back to him. And when you look at everything, the roster, the direction, the decisions, it all points back to him. So no, this wasn't a Cora problem. They fired the easiest one to blame. And don't get me wrong, Cora was part of it. I admit I wanted him out after the Brewers series, but that doesn't change the bigger picture. Because even with his flaws, he was never the root of the issue. The real problem is how this team is being run. We all know who this really comes back to, Craig Breslow. Because when you look at the last 14 months, it's not just one move, it's a pattern, and it goes all the way back to the Alex Bregman situation. Reports said Alex Cora and Sam Kennedy were pushing to go get him, understanding exactly what a player like Bregman brings to a team trying to compete in the AL East. While Breslow and the front office took a more cautious approach. And that's the issue. Because when your organization isn't aligned on a move that big, it tells you everything. And when it got to the point where John Henry had to step in, it made it obvious. This team doesn't have one clear direction at the top. And when that happens, you get exactly what we've been watching. And that's where it opened up a whole new set of problems, because now you're not just adding a player, you're changing the structure of the team. And that's where the Rafael Devers situation comes in. All offseason heading into 2025, the Red Sox made it clear Devers was the third baseman. That was the plan. But once Bregman arrived, that changed overnight. He started taking reps at third, and Devers was suddenly pushed toward DH. No build-up, no real explanation, just a complete shift. And that's where everything broke. Because now it's not about positions anymore, it's about trust. You told your franchise player one thing, then completely flipped it. Then the season starts. He struggles early without real reps, and instead of stabilizing things, the team keeps adjusting. Injuries hit, roles change again, and now the same player you pushed aside is being asked to do even more. And there were even moments where you could feel how weird the situation had gotten. There was a report that after Devers hit a walk-off home run, Breslow came down and gave him a high five, and I was there for that. And on the surface, everything looks normal. Big moment, celebration, everything fine. But behind the scenes, you've got tension building, roles changing, and trust already starting to break. At that point, it was already gone. Not because of one moment, but because of everything that led up to it. And eventually, the relationship couldn't be fixed, and the Red Sox moved on from Devers. And this isn't the only example of how embarrassing this organization has been behind the scenes. There was real reporting that Craig Breslow wanted to make major changes to the coaching staff, including the hitting coaches. Players in the clubhouse knew about it, and at one point, Alex Bregman, in his first year with the team, was already one of the most influential voices in that room and went to bat for those coaches when their jobs were in question. Now, this next part, this is just my opinion, but when you look at how everything played out, it makes you wonder if that played a role in how the Bregman situation was handled in the offseason. Because time and time again, it feels like it's Breslow's way or the highway. For the love of God, people in the front office miss Chaim Bloom people skills. And honestly, it's beyond laughable. It's more obvious it feels that behind closed doors, Breslow doesn't exactly have a lot of fans in the organization. Because at the end of the day, running a franchise isn't just about numbers. It's about people. And right now, it doesn't feel like that balance is there. And you can see that play out in the Bregman situation this past offseason. Because once you clearly chose him over Devers, that was your direction. But when it came time to fully commit, they didn't go all the way. There were reports that when Bregman and Boris came back with a stronger offer, the Red Sox didn't believe it. They thought it was a bluff, thought they were bidding against themselves, and instead of pushing to lock in the player they chose, they stood still. And around the league, players notice that. They see how the Red Sox operate. They see how quickly things can change here. And when there's already a lack of trust, that matters here. And when there's already a lack of trust around this organization, that matters. Because now it doesn't just look like caution, it looks like hesitation. After Bregman ends up in Chicago, the Red Sox pivot again. Suddenly, they make their big move and sign Ranger Suarez to a long-term deal. And right in the middle of the offseason, Craig Breslow comes out and declares this is going to be a pitching and defense team. And that's the problem, because just months earlier, you were talking about adding bats, making a splash, and building around a player like Bregman. Now it's a completely different identity. And that's why this team is so hard to trust. Because the direction keeps changing. One minute you're trying to contend with star power, the next you're trying to build a pitching first team. And when you keep switching like that, you never actually become anything. And when you take all of that, everything we've seen from this team, the roster confusion, the mixed messages, and the lack of alignment, and you put it together, that's the environment Alex Cora was managing in. And once he's gone, this is what's left.